Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator based in the United Kingdom. And today we're doing a bit of a Technique Tuesday again. So as I said, I'm just going to revisit some old techniques that have been around quite a while, but it's always good to have a look at something again. So I thought we'd do a bit of Emboss Resist. So I'm using Sentimental Swirls, no DSP. The only punch I'm using is the Strawberry Builder punch, which coordinates with Sentimental Swirls, and just one colour ink. We are going to need some clear embossing powder and some Versamark. So, as you can see here, what we actually do is we heat emboss, and then we're going to ink over that afterwards to create our lovely subtle background. Then a little bit of stamping over the top. Of course, we've stamped the inside of the card too. Helps if I show it you. So pretty card, great to have in your stash, and comes together really easily as well. So that was Highland Heather. I thought I'll go for a colour which I probably don't use that much of. Not really an orange girl, but kind of Calypso Coral. It is quite a pretty colour, and it's in the Subtles range. So I thought if you've bought the Subtles range as your starter set, let's go for it. So a piece of A4 cardstock, cut in half and create a standard 10th fold card. So this is 10.5 by 29 and I score at 14.5. I like to just take it down a little bit because it just makes layering easier. Other things that would be really useful for you to have is a stamping pierce mat, because they work really well to get a really good impression when using a photopolymer stamp set. And I'm going to need 2 pieces of basic white. So the first piece, both pieces are the same size. They're 14 by 10 centimetres. If you work in inches, just use a 1/4 inch. And then a couple of offcuts of basic white and Calypso Coral for my sentiment. Some pearls to go inside the card. And if you've got an embossing buddy, is really useful as well. So when we're doing embossing, one of the things, obviously we handle cardstock, we have oils in our hands, so it's really good to have something that will, a powder that will coat your card and just stop you getting any spare bits and pieces. You may have an embossing buddy. This is the old Stampin' Up! One, which is a little sack filled with chalk. I've got this new tool here, which I'm finding works really well. Just a lovely little brush with some powder in it. And you just brush that over, and what I find with this is it doesn't seem to put quite as much powder on, hence I quite like it. So cover your card with a bit of embossing buddy to remove any residue. Grab your stamp, pop it on the block. This is a large stamp, so really recommend you go in with your ink pad to your stamp to get it really well covered. So the equivalent to tap, tap, tap is to move our ink pad all the way across, and then, although you can't see it, I'm just sort of popping that on the left there. And you can see a faint image once you have inked it up. So what I'm doing is, you may not be able to see that faint image as well, but I'm then going to just pop that and sort of try and line up that circle and pop my big swirl across the bottom as well. Okay, so I've then got my 2 double swirls on there. Now I want to come in with my clear embossing powder and a piece of paper. As you can see, I've used this for other projects. Just a piece of scrap paper, and liberally cover with your clear embossing powder. And you're going to, and it's not at all wasteful, hence you have the piece of card. Just make sure you've got a good coverage. So if you look there, you can see that. I'm then going to clear up my embossing powder. I have had a mistake on camera before now, where it has all gone everywhere. So we don't want that to happen. So just curve your piece of paper up. It hardly uses any at all. And then you're just going to heat emboss that. So with your heat gun, I've got a Stampin' Up! One. This is great. It's got two heat settings. I tend to use high just to get it up for heat. Then drop it down a little bit. And I heat from underneath, because then you can actually see the powder as it changes state. You don't want to overheat it because it'll just soak into the card. But once you'll see that kind of change, see it's just starting to go glossy. So this takes a moment. You don't need to, I tend not to waft it, I tend to hold it in one place. until that change happens, and just literally just a kind of second more. And I'm holding that kind of a couple of inches away from my card behind. And so you can see that that's starting to change, and you'll see it all become beautifully glossy. So now we've got our cardstock, which is lovely and heat embossed. Oh no, there's a little bit I've missed. Okay, so you had the noise bit, great fun. Something that's useful is this is a piece of like baking sheet. This allows your brush to kind of glide over it. So I'm using one of my blending brushes. I tend to keep a blending brush for each of the colour families. And then all I'm going to do is dip my ink into my brush into there. I'm then going to kind of press off and then come in from the edge. And just holding that brush quite lightly on the basis you can always add more colour afterwards. Just come in, as I say, always come in from the side, because that way you don't get any sort of hard marks. And then as you come over, just make sure I'm sort of going over everywhere where the image is. This is a lovely way to kind of create backgrounds, add a bit of interest, particularly when you've got a large, sort of almost a solid sort of shape, or a swirl like this that creates a pattern. And so you can add as much or as little colour as you like, really. And you'll see it's not kind of really showing up, and I'll show you why that is in a moment. So once you've got happy with your blending, so you can see that's starting to become more even now. Just keep going over. Like so. And then grab yourself a tissue, a bit of kitchen towel, and then just rub over. And what that will do is that takes the ink off the top of your embossed bit, showing the white card behind, and then you can see whether you want to add a little bit more colour. So I'm just going to add a little more colour in this corner here to help make that pop, and a little bit here. Again, just come in, rub over the top, and then you've got your piece of card, that lovely embossed resist. Then we can do our stamping for our flowers. So you just need to grab yourself a sort of a scrap of basic white. I keep mine in a little plastic pouch, so I've always got something there. I'm going to leave that there because I want to stamp off with some of these as well. So I've already popped my stamps onto my block, and I'm just going to pop that onto my Stampin' Pierce mat and just go in and stamp my flowers in a little line. Just do an extra one, so I've done sort of 8 flowers there. I'm going to come in and stamp off and fill my flowers in. I did try it by stamping on the Calypso Coral cardstock, but actually, or rather when I did the Highland Heather version, but it just made it a little bit too strong in colour. When you're doing sort of an effect like this that is quite sort of subtle, it's quite nice to have something that again reflects that. So we've done our flowers. While we've got our ink pad out, I'm just going to stamp my sentiment as well. So again, I've got that on one of our blocks. This piece of cardstock is about 2.5 by 5 centimetres, so 1 by 2 inches. And I'm just going to stamp that in the middle-ish, yeah. And I've got a little layer that's just a couple of millimetres longer than my sentiment. So just pop that to one side. Now before I put I'm going to leave my Stampin' Pierce mat out for the moment because we're going to use that again for our flowers. I'm going to put my swirls as well. So now that that's kind of, when I say dried, it wasn't that wet to start off with, what I'm going to do is add a few extra swirls. I decided it was quite nice to have something to sort of add a little bit of interest to our image. And I'm just sort of coming in where there are some gaps. And you've got swirls that go in opposite directions. So I'm just going to come here with this one. Just see that's the swirls in the opposite direction. Again, another one here. That one wasn't as good. And that just, as I say again, just adds a little bit more to our card. I'm actually going to do that one again. Yeah, I think that's probably where we want it to be. Yep, I think that's sufficient. Pop those to one side. Pop our inky bits to one side as well. And while that's drying, so I always try and remember to put things to one side just for a few moments. The inks do dry really quickly, but it's just nice to make sure when that you're not going to sort of smudge things when you take the time. I'm just going to punch out these flowers. You can see, just feed that through. You'll find you get a bit of extra. I've probably used a slightly wider bit than I necessarily needed to on this flower. It only needs to be about 2.5 centimetres. And just keep, sort of trimming off, getting rid of some of that excess. Because what you don't want to do is for that to gunge up your punch, get it stuck. If you struggle with dexterity or strength in your hands, then simply pop it down the hard surface and press down. That works just as well. Just need to line it up, and you can do that by sort of manipulating your card. I tend to pick it up simply because when I'm on camera, I obviously can't stand over it quite as well. And you get that lovely confetti on the top, shooting out at the camera. Okay. There we go. So, now we've got our flowers. I'm going to pop them all face down to start off with. Because what I want to do is shape them slightly, and by shaping them, what we're doing is in fact stretching the fibres. You can do this if you've got a ball tool, that is great, but if you haven't, take your pick tool with the lid on and you just sort of press on that, and it just gives it a little bit of shape from the reverse, so stretches those out, gives it a little bit of texture as well, like so. And I say just keep pressing. Well, this Sentimental Swirls stamp set is one of the $1 million stamp sets. So when a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator achieves the incredible achievement of selling $1 million in sales, they get to go on a fabulous trip to the head office in Utah, and they get work with the design team on a stamp set, which then is released. It can take up to sort of 18 months or so after they actually achieve it by the time it's gone through the production process. But they then get to have the stamp set with their name on it, which is just amazing. I'm just going in here and just wiping off where I've stamped, just to make sure that there's no bits of straying on top of that embossing. I'm actually going to add this to my card now, because I don't want to be adding glue once I've added the dimension on the front, because you're going to end up just pressing it down and getting rid of it. So that's my Seal Plus. Where's my seal? Seal, okay, nowhere to be seen at this moment. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Tombow to the back. Yeah, don't go mad. open your card out, always add it to a flat card, and then just centre that on the front there. And then we can start adding our flowers. I'm going to add my sentiment first because then I can add my flowers around it. So I'm just adding a couple of our dimensionals to the back there, that little panel. And if you wanted to, you could obviously die cut. I haven't added that very centrally, have I? Okay. So I'm just going to sort of add that in the middle there. And then to add my flowers, I'm just going to pop a little bit of Tombow on the back there. And then you can just add your flowers wherever you want. So I kind of want a bit of a cascade. So I turn those over. I can just add a blob, complete with cat fur. Yeah, I can't say, definitely not a pet-free home in this one. I've got my two cats, one of which is a little bit poorly at the moment. My new puppy, who is certainly keeping me very busy. And the chicken, who is on her own. And we kind of keep thinking, you know, how they say that, you know, chickens don't survive on their own. No, this one does. She was an absolute bully to the other ones, and we thought, oh well, you know, once she'd finished them off, you know, they passed on. So we now have a chicken who doesn't lay eggs, who is quite happily ruling the roost, you know, in the run in the garden. She's a little madam. So there we go. Okay, so actually I think that's probably sufficient. Could I add a couple more? Maybe no, do you know what? I'm going to leave those. What I am going to do though is add some pearls. With your take your pick tool, just a tip, turn it and then take the pressure off, and that way it doesn't keep oozing. And then you can easily pick up a pearl, pop it in, and that obviously, the pressure of adding that pearl also helps press that flower into place as well. There we go. I've got an extra stray little pearl there. There we go, add that to the front. And one thing I forgot to do is actually to do my inner panel. So I've got, as I said, another piece of cardstock here, and all I did on the inside of my other card was to grab my stamp, can't find the words today, grab my scrap of paper because I'm going to come off the edge, and I just repeat stamped these flowers, but I'm stamping off a little bit first just to make it a little bit lighter, kind of like a watermark almost on the inside. There we go. There we go. Grab the card. She says, now I find my Stampin' seal. So just putting a fine line of glue to make sure your card is opening in the right orientation, and add your layer. So there we have our pretty Sentimental Swirls Emboss Resist technique. Highland Heather, Calypso Coral, I think both actually look really lovely. And if you want to purchase the Sentimental Swirls with Strawberry Builder Punch, just pop along to my blog. You'll find the links below in the description bar. And you'll also find them if you go to my blog at flutterbyheidi.co.uk. To this post you'll find all the links in there as well. Any problems, give me a shout and come back and see me again soon. And I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It really does make a difference. And click the bell too, and that way you'll know when I publish again. So thanks for watching. Bye now.